Salvete discipuli. This is Magister Crooks. I hope you're all doing well. I'm sorry we couldn't meet in person again. The weather's been quite malus lately. I thought I would take a few minutes here to help you with your lesson. So for this week, we are to do chapters 22 and then also the review chapter 23. And then we're going to work on our Libellus in chapter 9. So let me start off with walking us through chapter 22. So page 161. So we have a new chant here for the imperfect of sum. Sum esse fui futurum. The verb for to be. This is our most important verb. Pretty much in any language, you can't say much if you don't know how to say the different states of being. So again, sum is an irregular verb. It doesn't follow the same rules as the regular verbs. And in fact, the word regular comes from the word in Latin that means rule, right? It doesn't follow the rules. So we have to really take some time to chant this, to learn this, to really sort of take it to heart so that it becomes muscle memory. So first, we already have the present forms here, the present conjugation. So we'll just go through those quickly. So again, with any conjugation, it'll follow this pattern. It'll always have first, second, and third person, and it will always be either singular or plural. So we have sum, I am, es, you are, est, he, she, it is, sumus, we are, estis, you all are, sunt, they are. Now, I know we've already gone over the present tense for sum many times, but I do want you to remember, even though it's irregular, there are still some rules and patterns it's following that will help you along. It's not like they're completely unrelated to one another. So let's just remember here to look at present. It follows that same rule we've gone over, the most, must, isn't. Sum is m. Es is the s. Est is the t. Right? So in your most, right? We don't have an O here, right? Like in most of our verbs, regular verbs, right? The I form is usually with an O, the first person singular. This is an exception. But still it follows that most, must, isn't pattern. So sum ss, most. Sum mus, that's always going to indicate we, mus. Here comes the t in must. Tis estis, you all are. And then we have most, must, isn't. So the is and the unt becomes isn't. And then finally we have sunt, they. And those are going to be fairly, we've seen that over the course of this class. Those are consistent, right? That st, us, tis, nt. And usually it's instead of a it's an o. But that's been pretty consistent. It's going to be the same. Excuse me, I'm a little bit under the weather. It's going to be the same with the imperfect tense. So let's jump on over there to the other side of that chart on page 161. So for I was, we have eram. So again, we have that m. And you can see just like other regular imperfect verbs, it's pretty much following the same pattern, right? Bam, ba, spot. Vamos, batis, bant, right? The imperfect sheep. Except here, instead of a ba, we have a ra. And we've taken the esse, right? Sum esse fui futurum, and we turn it to an era. But they're all the same. It's all era across the board. And it still follows that most, must, isn't pattern. So eram, eras, erat, eramus, eratis, erant. So again, mus, tis, nt. So that's eram, I was, eras, you were, erat, he, she, it was, eramus, we were, eratis, you all were, erant, they were. So really spend some time with this. Focus on trying to really get this memorized, taken to heart, because it will be something that you'll use very often in Latin. Okay, then we have our vocab. So for this week, it's all adjectives, all 10 of them. Let's start. First we have defessus. Defessus. This means tired. And then obviously we have the other genders here, so I don't usually say all of them because it's sort of implied, but just as a reminder, right? It's not just defesus, but it's also defesa and defesum. So all three genders are represented there. So that's for tired. Then we have sordidus. Sordidus. Dirty. That's where we get the word sordid. Tacitus. Tacitus. Silent. You'll get the derivative tacit from that. Someone gives their tacit approval, sort of like silent approval. Caicus. Caicus. This means blind. We do have some derivatives of this. Then we have gratus. Gratus. Grateful. That's an obvious derivative. Ignaus. Ignaus. Cowardly. Justus. Justus. This means just, fair, or right. Now, obviously, the word just is a direct derivative of this word. And I want you to notice there's two different spellings. Again, this is the classical spelling with the I versus the ecclesiastical spelling with the J. But the pronunciation would remain the same. The J was pronounced like we pronounce a Y, like a Y. There's a lot of derivatives, by the way, of the word justus, right? We have just, obviously, but we also have justice, and justify, justification. Latus. Latus. This means broad. That's where we get the word latitude. And knowing that can actually help you distinguish between longitude and latitude later down the road. Mirus. Mirus. This means strange or wonderful. It's where we get the word miracle. It's also where we get the word mirror. And then horrendous. Horrendous. Got a double R here, so make sure you trill that R. Got to roll that R. Horrendous. That's where we get the word horrendous. Okay, let's go over to our grammar lesson. So I'm on page 163 at the bottom here. And I'll just read it with you all, and then we'll go over some of the examples here. So this is the accusative case part 2, objects of the preposition. A preposition is a little word that connects a noun or a pronoun to the rest of the sentence. An example of a preposition in English is to, as in the phrase, to the forest. That phrase can be attached to a sentence like this: the man walks to the forest. The noun that the preposition connects to the rest of the sentence is called the object of the preposition. When you put together the preposition, its object, and all of the adjectives and articles and other words that describe the object of the preposition, the whole group of words is called a prepositional phrase. Thus, to the forest is a prepositional phrase, right? So a phrase is when you're grouping all those words together. It sort of becomes its own thing. In Latin, the word for to, in the sense of to or toward, is ad. Thus, if we wanted to say to the forest, it would be ad silvam. If we wanted to say the man walks to the forest, it would be vir ad silvam ambulat. Did you notice what case the object of that preposition is in? If you didn't, look again. It's in the accusative case. In Latin, some prepositions are said to take the accusative. That's just a way of saying that some prepositions will always have objects that are in the accusative case. Because some prepositions take a different case, the ablative case, it's important to remember which ones take which case. We're going to concentrate for a while on the accusative case prepositions, starting with ad. So let me just interject briefly. So we sort of, as we've been learning our different declensions and our different forms, our different cases, we've sort of taken as a rule of thumb that the accusative is your direct objects, and that is true, generally speaking. And then the ablative is sort of your by with froms, right? Which kind of makes you think, well, that's sort of your prepositional case. But of course, as we already know, when we are translating the accusative, we put to, for. Well, this is one of those examples, right? So by learning the exceptions, by learning these rules, you'll know for the future when it's supposed to be accusative and when it's supposed to be ablative. Okay, let's hop back in. Let's take that sentence again and label all of its parts, putting parentheses around the prepositional phrase. Remember that we use SN for the subject noun and V for the verb. Let's use PR for preposition and OP for the object of the preposition. Labeling the sentence should look like this. So we have the subject noun over vir. We have the preposition over ad, then the object of the preposition over silvam, and then the verb over ambulat. All right, now try labeling a few on your own and then translate each sentence. So I'll do this first one with you all. Puer ad silvam erat. Okay, so first we always want to find our verb. What's our verb in this sentence? It wouldn't be puer. Puer means boy. That's a noun. Ad? Nope. That's a preposition. Silvam? Nope. That's a noun. Erat. It's the last word. It means to wander. So, and it's erat. So if we know our must isn't rules, well, this mustisnt. This is he, she, it wanders because it's not in the imperfect tense or the future tense. Okay, so he, she, it wanders. Erat. Well, who's he, she, it? Now we find our subject noun. It would have to be, of the two nouns here, puer and silvam, it would have to be puer because silvam is not in a nominative case. It's in the accusative. So the boy wanders. Puer erat. The boy wanders. Let's put a V for verb over erat. And let's put a subject noun, sn, over puer. And now we have the boy wanders. So what remains? Ad silvam. Well, we know what ad means. It's been told to us in this lesson. It means to. Silvam, we already know from the previous sentence. And of course, you should just know it because you've been practicing your vocab, is forest. So, to the forest. So we would put a PR for preposition over ad, and an OP for the object of the preposition over silvam. So the boy wanders to the forest. All right. So continue the rest of these on your own, and then let us hop on over to our Libellus, chapter 9. All right, so here I have prepared the first two sentences of Libellus, chapter 9, caput noem, as they would say in Latin. And this is about Nero, who was quite the character. We'll learn a little bit about him in these sentences we translate. But he is obviously infamous within church history, and really he was infamous within secular history as well. So let's go ahead and translate the first sentence here. The sentences are now becoming a little bit more complex, so you will need to be sure that you are checking your glossary for these extra words, and also really relying upon the rules that you've memorized up to this point. And be sure to punctuate here. Okay. So let's start with the first sentence. Postquam Roma flagrat, Nero multa supra ruinas aedificat. Okay. So a couple things here. First, we have two separate clauses divided by a comma. So let's just focus on translating one clause at a time, since we know that a clause has to have a verb and a subject, or a subject and a predicate. So let's look at this one. Postquam Roma flagrat. Now, postquam is going to be a new word for you. So more than likely, you'll find it in your glossary for this chapter. So if you're looking at your chapter 9 in your book, you'll see postquam is the very first word there. It's a conjunction, and it means after. After. Okay, so after Roma flagrat. Okay, we know what Roma means. That means Rome, and it's also in your glossary. It appears to be very likely in the nominative. Then we have flagrat. That's also a new word. It's in your glossary. It's a verb. Flagro, flagrare. Bonus points. What do you think the next two principal parts are? Probably flagravi, flagratum. This means to burn, but not just to burn, but literally to burn to ashes or to cremate, right? This is like really, really burned. Kind of like it's burned all the way it can be burned. So we would translate this into English not just to burn, but to burn to ashes. So let's look at how it's conjugated. Flagrat. Relying on our rules of conjugation. Most, must, isn't. So let's see. It's not flagraba. So it's not imperfect. And it's not flagrabo or flagrabu or flagrabi. So it's not going to be future. So we know it's going to be present tense. So then let's conjugate. Flagro, flagras, flagrat, flagramus, flagratis, flagrant. Okay, so flagro, flagras, flagrat. So that would be he, she, it burns to ashes because it's present tense. All right, so after postquam, Roma, Rome, flagrat, burns to ashes. After Rome burns to ashes. Next clause. Nero multa supra ruinas aedificat. So again, what's our verb? What's our verb? Nero means Nero. That's not a verb. Multa. Nope. Our glossary says that's an adjective. That means many. Or sometimes, if not often translated, many things. Because we wouldn't say, oh, there are many's here. No, we'd say there are many things here. We don't really have a plural for many in that sense, like the Romans did. They sort of understood that it meant many things. Supra? No, supra comes from super, we've already learned, which means over or on top of. Ruinas. Well, our glossary says that that is a noun. It looks like a first declension noun, feminine. It means ruin or debris. So we're only left with one word, aedificat, or aedificat. That would be our verb. Now, we've learned this word before. It comes from the same root as the same word as aedificium, which means building. So if this is the verb form, it probably means to build. And it does. Aedificat. Okay, now we have to conjugate it though. Is it I build, you build, he, she, it builds, we build? What would it be? Well, it's not going to be future tense because there's no boo, be, or bo. And it's not going to be imperfect because there's no ba. So it has to be present tense from what we've learned so far. And then let's go down the list. Is it aedificio? Is it aedifico? Aedificas? Aedificat? I build, you build, he, she, it builds? Yes, aedificat. Okay, so he, she, it builds. All right. Now we need to figure out who he, she, it is that's doing the building. Well, we have two nouns here. We have Nero and we have ruinas. It's probably going to be Nero. Nero, he builds. Because ruins is not going to make much sense. How can ruins build? And also, it's plural, so it wouldn't match. That's more important. Ruinas is plural, so that can't match with edificat, which is he, she, it, singular. So Nero builds. Nero builds multa supra ruinas. Multa, which the glossary says is many things. So Nero builds many things. Supra ruinas. Supra ruinas. Well, what do we say supra meant? It means above or over. So Nero builds many things over ruinas, the ruins. And just to confirm, let's do our declension for ruinas. So this is going to be a first declension, feminine. So I am I, and then plural, I arum is, as is I. Okay, I arum is as. So that's nominative, genitive, dative, accusative. So this is an example of an accusative that is an object of the preposition, because supra is a preposition. So this fits well into our chapter 22 lesson. Okay, so we could translate that then as Nero builds many things over the ruins. Well, let's see. What is one of the things he builds? Let's go to chapter 2. Nero magnam domum auream intra muros Romae aedificat. Okay, again, let's start with our verb. Nero, that's not a verb. Magnum, nope. That's an adjective. Domum, nope. That's a noun. Auream, nope. Intra, no, that's a preposition. Muros, nope, that's a noun. Romae, nope. Aedificat. It's the only verb in the sentence. Aedificat. And again, it's he, she, it builds. Okay, so who's the he, she, it? Well, we have a couple contenders. We have Romae, domum, auream, although this is actually in an adjectival form, so we can treat this as like an adjective. Or Nero. Well, it can't be Romae because that's plural. If it were in the nominative form, which it needs to be for it to actually be the subject noun, typically speaking, for the verb. So it can't be that because it's not singular. This is aedificat, he, she, it builds. How about domum? Domum means house, right? Comes from domus. This is actually an exception. So the glossary actually tells us here, although domus may appear to be a masculine second declension noun, it's actually a fourth declension feminine noun. I know, your heads are probably exploding right now. Therefore, both magnum and aureum are correctly placed in the feminine gender. So, you might think domum looks like a second declension. It's actually fourth declension. Don't worry, we're not going to get to fourth declension this year. But it's not going to be that because it says here in the glossary it's in the accusative form, this domum aureum. Well, if it's in the accusative form, accusative case, rather, it's not going to be able to be the subject noun for the verb aedificat. That just leaves Nero. Nero builds. Nero builds magnam domum aureum. Magna means great. Domum aureum means here in the glossary, golden house. So the magnum fits with domum aureum. So Nero builds the great golden house. So we would call this Nero's golden palace. So Nero builds the great golden house intra muros Romae. Intra is a preposition that means within, right? We talk about the internet. That's a network between computers, between servers. But then you also have intranet, which are networks within a certain system. You'll see this sometimes at universities. They'll have an intranet where you only can access their system with one of their computers, unlike the internet. So intra means within. So Nero builds the great golden house within what? Muros Romae. Muros is wall. Walls, right? We've learned that one in the past. Murus. Murus. So let's conjugate that, or decline that. It's a second declension masculine, so us, I, o, o, e. Nope, that doesn't fit because that's singular. Let's go to plural. I, orum, is, os, is, I. Okay, os, so it's accusative. Aha, yet again, this becomes an example where the accusative matches a preposition. So intra is our preposition, within, and then muros is an accusative that takes the object of the preposition. So within the walls. But what do we do with Romae? What do we do with Romae? Let's decline it. It's, again, a first declension noun, feminine. So, I, am, I, arum, is, as, is, I. So, seems like it makes the most sense. There's not more than one Rome. There's just one Rome, one city of Rome. So it's probably singular then. And let's conjugate it again, or decline it again. I, am. So it could easily be genitive. Of the, or of. So we could translate it as Nero builds the great golden house within the walls of Rome. All right, that is it for this lesson. I look forward to seeing your translations when we all see each other again. And make sure you do both chapters 22 and 23 for the review. Otherwise, walete. Take care.